Here is where the battle is the hottest today. If we don't speak on them, who will?
D. James Kennedy Ministries presents Truths That Transform.
What do you stand to lose when media monopolies censor Christians? Today on Truths That Transform, we go behind the scenes with Lila Rose as she describes how her exposés on Planned Parenthood have faced resistance in the new media.
We've definitely seen some challenges over the years working with Google, working with Facebook. We've had YouTube videos mysteriously get pulled from our YouTube channel.
And we'll take a probing look at the media gatekeepers who censor Christians.
Their goal is to vilify us, to silence us, and to snuff us out. Or to quote the Southern Poverty Law Center, to destroy us.
We're lifting the lid on the hidden censorship of Christians and conservatives on today's Truths That Transform.
This is Truths That Transform.
Welcome to Truths That Transform, a production of D. James Kennedy Ministries, where we are standing for truth and defending your freedom. Tolerance once meant putting up with opposing viewpoints, but in recent years the definition has changed. The new tolerance is quite different. Today, either you agree with every left-wing viewpoint or you are deemed a hater. As a result, Christians and conservatives are now being muzzled in the world's largest marketplace of ideas solely because of their biblical viewpoint. Later in this program, you will meet a woman who has been directly censored by YouTube because of her pro-life position. And we will share a new resource with you exposing this growing threat to freedom and giving you steps to counter it. As we begin, Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute is an attorney doing vital work in America's court system to defend the religious liberty of Christians. I recently sat down with Brad to discuss this latest assault on the freedoms of speech and religion and the agenda behind it. We're seeing a new level of censorship among internet technology companies, Google, YouTube, Facebook, shutting down speech, arguing that they're not at all required to ensure free speech of all Americans on their platforms, their private platforms. This is a little bit of a concern in that as they have reached a critical mass in the marketplace, they dominate a good portion of the news, for example. Something like 63% of all millennials get their news from Facebook. And if Facebook is going to control the flow of the news and not allow free speech, are we headed to a difficult place for speech if these internet technology companies are not reined in?
This is extremely dangerous for those of us who have any appreciation for freedom of speech. You know, in the colonial days, in much of our nation's history, you had the public square. That was the forum for speech. And the First Amendment gave clear protection for these traditional public forums. Well, now things have shifted. Now the place for expression, for discourse, for speech, it's in social media. And if these conglomerates go down this road of deciding to no longer respect the free speech forums that these have become, and instead use these in ways to control speech, to control the minds of the American people, we're looking at something very dangerously close to George Orwell's 1984. And that should alarm all Americans from the left and the right who have a true respect for freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
One of the things that it seems that our system of laws have protected in terms of speech better than most other forms of speech is political speech, because it's so central to the heart and soul of the American experiment. Congressman from Middle Tennessee, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn from Middle Tennessee, made an announcement to run for the United States Senate, and in it she made a promise to defund Planned Parenthood, and based on that comment, she was censored by, I guess it was Google. When these companies censor political speech, are they not then trifling with democracy in a way that looks like the heavy hand of the barons of the 1880s and 90s who had so much disproportionate effect on government because of their money?
Yeah, I think it's a really good analogy. Because of the extreme nature of the control of those large companies in terms of American life, economic life, we had antitrust statutes. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. These companies, Google and the others, are begging for a similar antitrust statutory involvement of government. If they continue to go down this route of disrespect for differing opinions, political and otherwise. We already see this taking place in our public universities, and we at Pacific Justice Institute are very alarmed with regard to the extent to which public universities, which were once the open marketplace of ideas, are now becoming the most closed-minded tyrants of ideas that don't agree with a certain philosophy. That the fact that we're seeing this also creeping its way into social media puts us in a very challenging time in American history, none that I think any of us have seen in our lifetime, and one that must be addressed, or the outcome for freedom could be horrific for generations to come.
So when we see opponents to the gospel attempt to marginalize Christians and demonize Christians, their ultimate goal is to silence us, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Their goal is to vilify us, to silence us, and to snuff us out. Or to quote the Southern Poverty Law Center, to destroy us. That's their mindset. And our response, constructively, has to be the opposite. It has to be to connect, to respect, and to engage in relationships and discussion, to breed understanding, and at the very least, true tolerance. True Christianity is really all about true tolerance. And that's why we all have to work hard to protect it.
Indeed. There have always been those who have tried to silence the Christian message. And all that has changed over the centuries is the methods. The internet has provided unique new ways to communicate biblical truth, but it has also resulted in new methods of censorship. Dr. D. James Kennedy knew that the truth had the power to transform lives and entire cultures. And his daughter, my very good friend Jennifer Kennedy Cassidy, joins us now. Jennifer, your dad was a staunch supporter of the idea of using every means available to get the gospel out, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, Frank. And he was committed to using every available technology to get the gospel out. My father tirelessly proclaimed biblical truth, and he was zealous for people to understand the crucial role it played in the freedom, security, and prosperity of our nation. He also knew his history inside and out, and he recognized that there would be pressure to silence the Christian message. Pressure from those who hate God's truth, as well as social pressure for Christians to remain silent in a hostile culture. We're seeing that pressure now in the online world, where basic Christian truth claims are labeled as hateful and bigoted. Christianity is always a threat to those who would replace God with government and morality with sexual license. But we cannot be silent, as my father reminds us in this portion of one of his most requested messages, Will the Church Forget?
My question today is, will the church forget? Will the church forget what you and they and a great many thousands of others fought for, and what some gave the last full measure of devotion to defend? For the principles upon which this nation was founded, of liberty and not license, of godliness and piety and morality, this is what this nation was built upon. Will those things be forgotten? Alas, dear friends, I'm afraid that not only will they, will the church forget them, to a large degree, the church has already forgotten them. Does it make any difference? Well, how about Reverend Jonas Clark? You all remember Jonas Clark, don't you? You've forgotten old Jonas already. Alas and alack, and we owe so much to Jonas. If it weren't for Jonas, you wouldn't be here today. He was a pastor. He was a very influential pastor. He was truly a parson. Now, the word parson comes from the word person. He was the person in a little town called Lexington. And he was, as was in the case so often then, one of the few people, or sometimes the only person, who had an education beyond high school. And therefore he was the parson. He was the most influential man in town. Most of the people attended his church. One particular night, he was having dinner with some folks that you will remember, like John Hancock, Samuel Adams. It was a very distinctive night because it was the night when Paul Revere made his famous ride. And these two great patriots asked him the question. The question was, if war came, would the people of Lexington fight? And what did Jonas Clark say? Oh my goodness gracious me, oh my. We've never talked about such things as fighting for our liberties. I don't know. I'd have to give this some consideration. That's not what he said. He said, when asked, would the people of Lexington fight? The Reverend Jonas Clark said, I have trained them for just that. And the next day, the shot heard round the world was fired in the parking lot of his church, only a few yards from his parsonage. And the people that were killed were members of his congregation. And Reverend Jonas Clark looked down with great anguish on the bodies of those who had died and made this statement, which we should never forget. From this day will be dated the liberty of the world. It began in a church. Pastors, how many times I've had people come to me and say, why doesn't my pastor ever speak about any of these issues? And how many times I've had people tell me, my pastor doesn't have the courage to speak on these issues. Dear friends, here is where the battle is the hottest today. If we don't speak on them, who will? Who is going to speak about the great issues of our time? The church has historically dealt with every kind of issue. But we are to render unto God our hearts and our souls and our lives. We are involved in a great conflict for the soul of this nation, for the soul of the world. And many are spectators on the side. Dear one, Christ wants you to be a soldier for him. Pray that God will fill you with intensity to do whatever you can, to become involved, to get out of the bleachers and onto the field and become a participant in the greatest struggle in the history of the world. A struggle for goodness, a struggle for godliness, a struggle of Christ against Satan. That is the battle that we are in.
One person who is a genuine spiritual soldier for Christ is Lila Rose of Live Action, who battles tirelessly for the unborn. She has the righteous intensity and conviction to more than match her opponents in the pro-abortion movement. But since they could not defeat her ideas, they found another way around her: censorship, something we are seeing more and more in our day. Our own Dr. Jerry Newcomb has more.
Live Action is a pro-life organization leading the social media movement for our country, exposing the truth about abortion, about what's happening to the preborn child, and advocating for the rights of the defenseless. We haven't seen the results.
For years now, Lila Rose and Live Action have been making powerful pro-life videos seen on social media. One of her recent series reveals what actually happens in an abortion.
I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong.
These are grotesque, brutal acts against completely innocent human beings. And it's an inhumanity that we're allowing, a wild west of abortion that we're allowing in our country. And many people, the media, in politics, turn a blind eye.
This particular series shows in detail, without being gory, how abortion kills an unborn child, no matter how small. And the series is done with great compassion.
I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change.
What the abortionists do in secret, Lila Rose aims to shout from the housetops. Of this 4-part series on what actually happens in an abortion at each stage, she writes, on Facebook and YouTube, the 4 videos have a combined 85 million views.
Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
It's a new day when an independent pro-life organization can manage to gain that kind of viewership through social media alone. But now some of the gatekeepers in the social media platforms are starting to crack down on those with a pro-life perspective. Watch this interchange as Senator Ted Cruz recently grilled Facebook President Mark Zuckerberg at a hearing before Congress.
There are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship.
I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. I am very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas.
This battle related to how social media impacts the struggle for life does not just affect America. Recently, Lila Rose and Live Action decried how Google, Twitter, and Facebook decided to censor pro-life ads geared toward a recent referendum in Ireland to amend its constitution to allow abortion. This censorship meant that only the pro-abortion side of the issue was heard in all major forms of media.
Well, we've definitely seen some challenges over the years working with Google, working with Facebook. We've had YouTube videos mysteriously get pulled from our YouTube channel, and there have been complaints associated with them, so YouTube says we're checking those out. So we've actually had to have our lawyers send YouTube letters asking them to cease and desist censoring the videos. So that's been problematic.
Well, in my heart and my mind, life begins when the mother thinks it begins, not when anybody else thinks it begins. For some women, it's before they conceive. For some women, it's never. Even after they deliver, it's still a problem, not a baby.
Over the years, though, we've been able to successfully put those videos back up. We've also had a few issues with Facebook. Overall, because we have such an enormous platform on Facebook, the biggest for the movement, over 700,000 likes, a lot of content that we generate that reaches millions of people. We've had some issues with Facebook advertising not wanting to continue to promote videos that show the reality of abortion, some of our investigative films. So all in all, we have to work through those challenges, but we're still effectively reaching millions on a weekly basis, and we continue to do that.
Despite opposition and censorship from social media, including the ongoing refusal of Twitter to take pro-life ads from liveaction.org, Lila Rose continues to persist to get the pro-life message out because of what is ultimately at stake.
We're made in the image and likeness of God, recognizing that life is precious, our lives and the lives of other people. And the more we do that and the more meaning and the richness we discover in life through that we have a transformation. And I see it happening, and I'm excited to continue to try to do my part. And I believe because this is in the end God's work and God's nation, the world's in God's hands, we'll see success to protect every human life in our country.
What Lila Rose is experiencing is nothing more than viewpoint discrimination dressed up as tolerance. It's not discrimination from the government, but instead it comes from what are essentially media monopolies that control the internet's public square. This sort of censorship is happening more and more to Christians and conservatives. If you don't fully understand what's happening and how to counter it, we could see the Christian message silenced in this generation. Our own John Rabe now joins us. John, this is a serious issue, and not everybody gets the ramifications of how much control these internet monopolies have over us, do they?
That's exactly right, Frank. And of course, the younger that generations get, the more tied they are to the online world. And we're seeing an ongoing active censorship on the part of these Silicon Valley tech companies. And Frank, that's why we put together a very important DVD program. It's called Censoring the Truth: Facebook, Google, and the New Media Gatekeepers. The day's headlines show us that conservative and Christian viewpoints are being suppressed and censored, and it's extremely dangerous.
Censorship of Christians and conservatives by online media companies is making headlines virtually every day now. And it's a growing problem. Even the gospel itself is being silenced, as you'll see in this DVD program, Censoring the Truth, which we will send to you as our thanks for your generous donation to the vital work of this ministry. Simply write to us at D. James Kennedy Ministries, Box 11154, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33339, or call toll-free 877-962-7677. Or you can go online to djkm.org. Now, John, one of the things I think people really need to understand is we're okay with the idea of filtering some things on the internet that no one ought to look at. But the filter that these media technology monopolies use is a hard left-wing political filter, isn't it?
It really is. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, went before Congress and admitted that these Silicon Valley tech companies, including his own, are run by left-leaning, heavily left-leaning people. That ideology is brought to bear on the way that they decide what is going to be allowed and what isn't. And so Christian and conservative viewpoints are being censored. In this video, Censoring the Truth, we also tell the story, for instance, of David Kyle Foster. David Kyle Foster has been himself was delivered from the homosexual lifestyle by the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he is sharing that salvation and that deliverance with other people in videos. Well, the huge website Vimeo, which hosts videos, eliminated all of his content. They barred him from the platform, and this includes videos that are sharing the gospel. So the gospel itself is actually being imperiled and actively censored. People need to understand that, and we explain that in this video, Censoring the Truth.
As you can see, it is imperative that you understand what's at stake here and what these giant tech companies like Google and Facebook are up to. We will send you the special DVD program, Censoring the Truth, as our thanks for your generous donation to help us stand for truth and defend your freedom. Simply write to us at D. James Kennedy Ministries, Box 11154, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33339, or call toll-free 877-962-7677. Or you can go online to djkm.org. For quite some time now, we have been warning you that the transgender and homosexual movement is on a collision course with our First Amendment guarantees of religious freedom. A powerful member of the government's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has even said that in those cases where there is a conflict between sexual liberty and religious liberty, sexual liberty should prevail, she said. From pro-life videos being banned by social media gatekeepers to Christian bakers and florists being hauled into court merely for freely exercising their Christian conscience, the movement to push aside the clear protections of the First Amendment in favor of invented rights of sexual liberty is running at full throttle. A proposed new law in California would make what it calls sexual orientation change efforts an unlawful business practice. In the guise of a consumer protection bill, Assembly Bill 2943 would outlaw advertising offering to engage in or engaging in sexual orientation change efforts with an individual. The language of the bill is so broad that it seems to allow for the removal of the Bible from bookstores because of the Bible's historic teachings on sexual immorality. Even recommending certain Christian books could be deemed evidence of so-called fraudulent practices. Whether the bill passes or fails this time, I hope you can hear the warning bell ringing. There is a clear and powerful political movement in America aiming to silence, punish, and if necessary, imprison Christians for holding to biblical views on human sexuality. The question for each of us is whether we will nonetheless stand strong for truth, or whether we will fold in the face of this cultural pressure. As Jesus himself has told us, in the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. D. James Kennedy Ministries is standing for truth and defending your freedom. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Truths That Transform. I'm Frank Wright. We'll see you next time.
Next week on Truths That Transform.
I don't think the ultimate aim is to kill us. It is to get rid of us ideologically.
Their goal is to vilify us, to silence us, and to snuff us out. Or to quote the Southern Poverty Law Center, to destroy us.
When Silicon Valley controls content and controls the standards, it's going to be even unconsciously biased to the left.
That's next week. Today's program is available on DVD for your gift to this ministry of any amount. Please call, write, or log on to our website today. This has been a production of D. James Kennedy Ministries.